Welcome everyone in Copenhagen, and thank you so much. This is lovely weather here, and yet you have decided to come and listen to me, so thank you so much. Thank you, Bjørn and Cindy. I don't know the trick that you're doing there, but maybe I'm too young for that.
Maybe you are.
Maybe I am. And welcome to all of you on the live stream who's tuning in from wherever you're at. And I'm really happy that you're going to join this little live show here today. I got to be honest though, 90 minutes talking about me and my own book, that's a little bit too much advertising and excuse the way that I said, public masturbation. But the book does serve a higher mission. Since my first book came out, Goodvertising, to my new book, The Hero Trap, the mission is still very, very much unchanged. It is to understand the code behind what really enables change and really unlock what creates better lives. And a lot have happened since, because after my first book came out, I should be extremely happy, because it does seem like every CEO, every company these days are just flocking to talk about all the great stuff they're doing, right? And it looks a little bit like this. You know, oh, we're saving the turtles, or we're cleaning up the oceans, and everybody wants to talk about all that good stuff. And I know that I encourage that, but in some aspects, I'm losing my faith and purpose. And I'm losing my faith in the current approach to how our leaders and how our organizations stand up to create change. Because honestly, think about it. This is kind of similar to a guy who kicks open the door to a bar and says, I'm the world's best lover. I mean, at some point, somebody in that bar is going to find out you're not. So why do you think that works with brands, you know? I'm the world's savior, I can save you all. Why do we keep believing that? And I don't know how it is where you are at, but at least in Denmark, at least in the Northern Europe, when you go onto the supermarket aisles, it's kind of like heaven. You know, all the products, all the brands are saying, like little Mother Teresa over here, Gandhi over here, they all have something that they think, buy my product, I can save the world. That's what they're all saying. And that's what I believe is the hero trap. That is what I believe is wrong. So I go up against purpose, but I also go up against one of my heroes, Patagonia. And I'm sure that, you know, you can't talk about purpose without talking about Patagonia. But when you listen to what Patagonia is saying, we're in the business to save our home planet. That's what they're saying. You know, it does sound a little bit mad, right? I mean, if you were saying that, I'd be thinking like, really? I mean, if you think about it, what is it they do? I mean, they sell t-shirts to men who want to feel a little bit more outdoorsy or manly, and they are stuck in a flat in the Bronx, right? That's the target group. So I do think that they take the mouth too full, because they're going to fail. But I'm not saying Patagonia is going to fail. It's copying what Patagonia is doing that is the hard part. And I see it again and again. And one of the companies I had in my first book, Volkswagen, there's quite a few Volkswagen cases in my first book. And as we know, it didn't go as expected with Volkswagen. So here we have the ex-CEO of Volkswagen, Martin Winterkorn. And right now he's practicing how he can beam himself away from Dieselgate. It's like, beef me up, Scotty. Let me get away from planet Earth. He's probably not going to get that far away if we look at some of his executives right now serving 5-7 years jail terms. So straight into the hero trap. And talking about hero traps, there's another CEO here practicing another look. It is the ex-CEO of BP, Bob Dudley. Here, kind of like an evil version of Harry Potter, swinging his magic wand. And somehow magically trying to convince all of us that BP stands for Beyond Petroleum. You know, beyond that, you know, oily, bad stuff. But somehow people are not really buying the magic, because in most people's minds, BP stands for something like billionaire polluters, maybe, or British polluters, or like this old woman is saying, now you're pissed off grandma. And talking about piss, most companies' approach to doing good, to purpose, feels a little bit like pissing in a wetsuit. I don't know how many of you have tried it, but when you piss in a wetsuit, it feels warm, it feels nice, but then it quickly begins to stink. And that's what I see again and again. And when we look at the success of all these claims, from when the first book came out, the amount of people who now come out with these world-bettering claims, it's incredible. I mean, it's not a bird, it's not a plane, it is another company on its way to fly into the hero trap. Because the fact that the more companies talk about it, the more critical people become. I mean, you can look at any survey. There's one there in the bottom, it talks about Deloitte, how young people today, most of them don't even believe that companies are in this, besides just earning more money. And why should they think differently? And a second gap is, because for me, how do we create the need to change? How do we honestly create the need to change? Because we know, most people say they want to buy from purposeful companies, right? 65%, this is a global report, 65% say they want to buy from purposeful companies. But only 26% follow through. So there's a gap of 39% of people who are not doing what they want to do, who doesn't move from intention to action. And maybe it's not so surprising, because I think that's kind of how it works in life. Think about it, every January, we give ourselves this little New Year's pledge, right? And we say, hey, I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to be a more considerate boyfriend, or whatever those pledges might be. But just a couple of weeks into January, we're back at those good, bad old habits. The sneakers are lying there in the corridor. We're bad at being that bad boyfriend. Change is difficult. In fact, I do believe we are our own biggest barriers to change. So why do companies keep pitching them as the agents of change? So just out of curiosity, I obviously want to hear some of you New Year's pledges, and I'm gonna reveal mine in an instance, okay? So obviously, those online, you can obviously tweet it or you can write it. But for those of you in the room, let's just do this little exercise. So I'm gonna count down to 3, and then you're gonna shout out your New Year's pledge. I know it's a while back, so some of you might have forgotten it, but let's try and find it, because you might not have succeeded doing it, okay? So I'm gonna count down to 3, and then you're gonna shout out your New Year's pledge, okay? Ready? Is that a yes? Hey, good, okay. 3, 2, 1. That didn't really seem like something you believed in, so let's try again, okay? 3, 2, 1. Good. I couldn't hear it because it all kind of just muffled into each other. But it's okay. But each one of those things, for me, I believe, is an opportunity for an organization or for a leader to create change, helping us towards some of those goals or challenges that we're facing in life. And one of the New Year's pledges I had a couple of years ago was, because as Per said introductory-wise, I'm stuck in an airplane quite a lot of time, and obviously I want to do something about my climate footprint. So the one thing I said was, maybe I got to change the way that I eat. So I wanted to go to a more plant-based diet. And there was this company, it's a Danish-based company, they do these boxes that deliver at the door with like farm fresh produce and stuff, but it also comes with recipes, and they're called årstider in Danish, which means seasons. The interesting thing about this company is they don't put themselves up on the pedestal and say, you gotta eat this and that. No. When I interviewed the CEO of the company, he talked about something called Earth Connection, which was something you had to discover yourself. It was that connection with understanding the connection with the earth, the connection with the vegetables, and he shared this little nice anecdote about harvesting beetroot for the very first time. I don't know how many of you have actually harvested a beetroot, but definitely you have hopefully cooked with a beetroot at some time. But the way that it colors your hands red. So that's the earth connection. And even for them as a company, that was the journey they went on. And today I'm obviously super thankful, because årstiderne have taught me something new. They have helped me achieve one of my goals. Obviously, trying to create a beautifully looking vegan pie. Most of the time though, the reality that I don't share on my Instagram feed probably more looks like a little bit like this, yeah. Unhappy girlfriend, unhappy guests. But I think there's a point in that, because we are all on that journey towards change. It's not easy. But I think, again, this is where the opportunity is for leaders and organizations. This is me, a young me, driving on my little bicycle at Bornholm, and I'm sure that some of you can recognize this little feeling, because at some point, obviously, I had to let go of those extra wheels on the bicycle. And having my dad at hand, pushing me in the back, giving me those words of comfort and saying, you can do this. I think this is where there's a real opportunity for leaders and organizations to give us that little pat on the shoulder. And I think it's two fundamentally different approaches. Because on the one side, and the one thing we always hear from companies is believe in us as an organization, as a leader to bring about change. And I think we need to pivot to a new approach, where it's much more about leaders giving us the confidence to believe in our own ability to create that change needed. And it doesn't need to be big. It can be like this Copenhagen guy who just reminds us, you're beautiful, remember that. That's actually a guy who decided to do that on the sidewalks of Copenhagen. So I pretty easily found out that the one simple question to create this journey, whether you are a leader or an organization, is to ask this one pivotal question. Who can you help people become? Who can you help people become? Because in fact, the thing is, we don't hold much control, neither as leaders, and I think the leaders in the room, the leaders in the stream can definitely recognize this, and as organization, because this guy is in control. All of us, because the immense amount of pictures we upload on a daily basis, we dominate the media space. If we want to start a business, we can start a business with the click of a button. It's that simple today. I mean, I got to admit, and not to say that the marketeers in this room or on the stream are not good, but at the age of 12, you already have girls and guys who are amazing at selling products or selling themselves at Instagram. So why do we think that we can come with our classical mass media approach and say, we're the kings, we're going to save the world, believe in us? And in fact, the thing is that the perception and demand on brands is high. And we always hear things like, have us meaningful brands, talk about 80, 90% of consumers want leaders, want brands to play a big role in our lives. But there's an emerging trend of young people today believing that they are the ones that can take action. And I think we see that more and more with the movements that are popping up. Greta Thunberg and others are really showing this change. And in fact, it might not be that surprising, because for some reason, economists and sociologists have made us believe that the thing that rocks our boat is money, is status, but obviously it's not. I mean, I've worked in the creative industry for about 20 years of my life, and I've seen creatives burning their light in both ends of the candle for clients selling dog food. I mean, I'm not sure that it's the dog food or the client that's the motivation. As crazy as it sounds, creative people out there just love doing what they're doing. Or take Björn. I mean, Björn, you play music because you love playing music. And you're not getting paid today, exactly, that's the pivotal point. And you know what, anyways, I mean, the added benefits of being Björn is obviously he gets that kind of Ryan Gosling look and gets a beautiful looking girlfriend as well, but that's just a bonus. It's just a bonus. But the pure reason why you're doing it is obviously self-actualization. I love music. Then I'm stuck on a stage, kind of being a school teacher in a sweater for grown-ups, which is not as lucrative as Pierre made it sound in the introduction. And that is the good old Maslov. A guy that actually doesn't look like his hypothesis is working that well. He actually looks pretty sad. He doesn't seem that self-actualized himself. And if we look at how the market works today and how it has moved on, the thing is, we don't actually buy what the companies make anymore, or even for that sake, the why, the big societal values, because they're all claiming, like, we're Jesus, we're Mother Teresa, so we don't buy that anymore. The one thing that can't be faked, the one thing that is the pure pledge of any company or any leader is what they can make us become, what they can make us achieve. Like Årstiderne, who taught me to embrace plant-based cooking. So on the one axis, we see the brand purpose. On the second axis, we see the value for customer. Obviously moving from the good old days of advertising, talking about functional benefits, when that made sense, a faster car. moving up to emotional benefits, driving a more masculine car, so driving a BMW, feeling like a real man, whatever that is today. Goodvertising stopped at the level of saying companies need to provide a societal difference. We do good for this and that. But I do think that we're heading towards what is called a transformational difference, where it's about being, for example, a conscious traveler. And what is a conscious traveler today? I mean, probably the modern version of our tough guy in a midlife crisis driving his Harley Davidson, I guess looks a little bit like this. Still cool guy with the sunnies and all. So I think we all can recognize these challenges that we're facing. And for me, a major part of this and a big part of the journey and why it can sometimes take 3 years to write a book was that I wanted to understand what could really change, what could push the needle towards the change. And I came up with something called the arrow, inspired by coaching, inspired by psychotherapy, because those two disciplines move people from intention to action. And it does ask 4 fundamental questions. The first one is, what is it you do? I hope that every organization, a leader, know what it is. For Apple, it's not a constant. It can be the MacBooks, it can be music. Then the how are you unique in delivering your service or your product? That might be faster, more convenient, whatever that is. But what I think is so important, the pivotal question is, who can you help people become? How can you move people? Because it's not about your vision, your goals, but it's about my vision and my goals. And the last question is when? Because if we want to create change, when is pivotal? We need a deadline. You know you want to run that marathon, but maybe you want to start with the 21K before you go to the 42Ks. So way too often, when we deal with change, we need to have that pivotal question in there, when? The outcome of this, I call a transformative promise. And obviously, some of the wiser people on this stream might say, but hey, isn't that a purpose? You might argue it is, but for me, the big difference is that for me, a transformative promise is a promise about a change you can enable in people's lives. And it's much more about taking the back seat. It's not standing there on the pedestal and saying, yeah, we can do this and that. And one company who's done that is a South African health insurance company that is now in 7 markets. And they're called Discovery. And they have quite an interesting transformative promise, because they say we want to incentivize people to live healthier. We want to incentivize people to live healthier. It's a completely different way of thinking as an organization, something that resonates internally and externally. And it also makes them capable of being much more innovative. And one of the programs they've done, which is quite amazing, is called Vitality. So it's basically like your usual reward program, but this time you get rewarded for every time you go to the gym, every time you buy vegetables. So in that way, they give you those small notches. And the business case behind it is pretty clear. So they've done a market research with Apple, comparing the customers that are part of the Vitality program and those who are not. And the people who are part of the program are actually active 5.1 more days a month. That's quite an achievement. By focusing on the change, by focusing on the role that you want to play in people's lives. This is when you can nudge people to that necessary change. And as I said, it is 2 fundamentally different ways of thinking business and leadership. On the one side, the Patagonia way, where you put yourself at the center and you're the hero in people's lives. Or the one where you're the coach, you're the supporter. You are like my dad was when I was on that bicycle, pushing me towards believing in myself. And on this side, it's about, for example, what Lego is telling its young, old customers, and even internally, inspiring and developing the builders of tomorrow. It's a completely different promise. So obviously, when you all raised your hands and you shared your little New Year's pledges, there was a lot of opportunities there for innovating, for understanding what role you can play in people's lives. And just to give you an example about a company who I think have found something quite amazing and an interesting role to play. A snack company out of the US called Kind Snacks and founded by Daniel Lubczewski. And the one thing, their goalpost, their one thing that they want to achieve is making all of us a little bit kinder. And they've actually achieved that. I had a conversation with the CEO, Daniel, and he shared with me how they do each year a survey, even internally, where they ask the staff, so do you feel kinder today than before you started in this company? And 86% say yes. So it does work. But obviously, proving the business case of what I'm talking about is not always easy. You know, if we could just look at financial data and say, Thomas is right. You know, if we follow the arrow, we're going to succeed, we grow people and the business grow. It's not that easy. But I wanted to test something. So I did commission a research where I compared two sorts of campaigns. The typical purposeful campaign, we are the heroes in your life, versus the one that enable people. So the one example is Budweiser. And I'm not sure that all of you have seen it, but it was an ad during Super Bowl. But obviously the claim is, this Bud is for a better tomorrow, and talking about how most of the beer today is brewed either powered by wind energy or offsetting the emissions. So one approach. A second approach is what P&G's brand always did a while back, where they wanted to change the meaning of that little word, like a girl, from a statement of you're not as good as the boys to a statement of pride. And talking about how girls can be incredible and unstoppable and do things like a girl. And the interesting thing was, and you've got to have a graph in your keynote to make it convincing, okay? So here's a graph for you. But anyway, so I did compare 4 purposeful campaigns, always, as you saw. 4 purposeful campaigns, Budweiser, as you saw, with 4 transformative campaigns. And the interesting thing is you can see competence and warmth, brand warmth, they're equal. But again, remember, these ads have been tested true and true before they were aired. But the one thing that's interesting and striking is, in fact, that the motivation, how motivated people feel to act when they see this commercial, goes up with about 32 to 39% when you take a transformational approach. And the one thing I was curious about was where the competence would fall, because in a way, you don't talk about yourself as a leader, you don't talk about yourself as a company, yet still people believe that you are competent. When we then look at the kind of deep down of, are people then willing to pay for it? The interesting thing is that people are actually willing to pay a premium price when you take a transformative approach. Still, the numbers are a little bit lower, 25 to 32%. But it does show us that maybe we aren't buying the big why. Maybe it is actually the fact that we're buying who those companies can help us become. And I think there is a big change happening right now in society. And when I was 14, my biggest wish for my birthday was a ghetto blaster. You know, one of those 2 cassette tapes and a CD, probably playing a track of Cotton Move, doing the snorkeling thing and all that stuff. But my parents are school teachers, and there's one thing with school teachers, you're gonna nag them a lot before you get your ghetto blaster. Fast forward to my niece, who turned 15 not too long ago, and her wish for her birthday was something quite different. She's a tiny little girl, 15 years old, and she wanted to jump out of a moving airplane in a parachute. Absolutely crazy. I would not have dared to do that when I was a kid, when I was her age. But it does show what young people are buying today. They're not buying things, at least in our part of the world. They're too lucky. There's too many things. Look at every Christmas. They're like unpacking and next thing, next thing. What they're buying is experiences, things that challenge them. And I think we can all recognize that even ourselves. You know, think about how crazy it is that we go to Italy today and then we don't pay for people at the restaurant. No, we pay to make the pasta ourselves. I mean, that does show the transformation that we're buying. And I think actually these days, during Corona, it's been incredible to see how people have embraced this idea about self-actualization, suddenly thinking that they have just one thumb on each hand. Again, they can actually do carpentry, they can paint and all that stuff. I'm sure that a lot of you in this stream have experimented with baking and doing cakes, or maybe even picking up playing the guitar like Björn, you know? I'd love that one day, Bjørn. You gotta teach me after this. So the pandemic, I think, has shown us that true value and the fact that we're not buying and the best things in life aren't things. And this is where brands and leaders can help us become smarter, more connected, healthier. Whatever rocks our boat, whatever our challenges is, this is where brands can help us. And again, to just touch on the business case, isn't it crazy that one of the most successful companies in the world, IKEA, when you're scratching the surface, the business case doesn't make any sense at all. At least not in our part of the world. Because one of the things, we have a lot of money, but we don't have a lot of time. They sell cheap furniture that takes a hell of a lot of time. It's simpling. How does that business model work in our lives? It shouldn't on the first side. But again, it is actually that little spark of achievement that is so fantastic when I can come in to my girlfriend and say, hey, see, I did the Billy bookshelf. Most of the time, again, that is probably not what happens when you have kind of 6 thumbs on your hand. But at least it's what I aspire towards. And here, if you don't believe in transformation and transformation sells, this guy should convince you, the church, you know. Then the transformation business. Here we have Pope Benedict praying for more money. And you think the modest Pope mobile that we're seeing, you know, you should see his garage. This is a real image. This is what he's driving, probably in his spare time. This is the true Pope mobile. They're doing pretty okay on selling people transformation, on telling people that they should believe in themselves. This probably would even make Donald Trump jealous. And it takes a lot to make Donald Trump jealous. So in fact, leadership has to change because for too many years, leadership have been a white male saying, like a captain, this is what I believe in, this is the direction we're heading, like a screaming Steve Jobs. Me, my values, my company, and it's written on the wall when you enter that company. What sort of craziness is that? Because quite frankly, I think leadership is about helping people grow. And that's ultimately what's going to grow the business. And I think a leader's role is actually connect all of our individual dreams, all of those things that you said in this room, towards something bigger. And I think the way we see movements today are dramatically changing. I mean, look at the Me Too movement. There's not really, you know, a specific face on that movement. It is something that we can all buy into. Even as a guy, I can say, what does Me Too mean to me? And I can buy into it. So when we look at what we're buying and how the market is changing, it is for sure that the only proof point is not to try and outcry each other and scream, I'm the greenest, or I care the most. It's not about trying to outdo each other, because that innovation game is going to fail. The only proof point that you can have is to help people achieve amazing stuff. It's the only proof point. And I think we're at a period in time where we have no choice. We need to understand what it takes to create change, to remove those individual barriers we have, because everybody in this room, everybody in the live stream is faced with this gargantuan task that our generation has to solve this environmental mess and social mess that we're in right now. We're the one generation. We have 30 years to achieve that. So unless we can get people to change, unless we can get people motivated, we won't succeed. So my message today is actually really, really simple. It's about time leaders, organizations, brands, companies step down from that hero's pedestal. Because if you claim you're a hero, you will fall down like a can of soup. And instead, I think, if you truly want to change the world, you have to start with yourself, and then you can change the world. And I know I started with Jesus, and I'm going to end with Jesus. And here we have Jesus battling his own small challenges. And hopefully, if he can succeed, I'm sure we all can. So thank you so much for listening to this first keynote, The Hero Trap. and we have lots of other exciting stuff going on. So thank you so much.
Thank you.